I was 22 years old. I had never started a company. I had never had a full-time job. I was building a business at the intersection of hardware and software and data science and medicine, and I wasn't a hardware engineer or a computer scientist. So I think there was a lot of skepticism that I was going to be able to build this technology. Hundreds of investors said no. And so, every day I just try to pick myself up and put one foot in front of the other and keep building.
In 2012, while studying at Harvard, Will Ahmed started building what would become Whoop. Built around a screenless wearable, the business is now valued at $10.1 billion. And has been embraced by some of the world's top athletes, including LeBron James, Michael Phelps, and Cristiano Ronaldo.
There was a period in 2017, 2018 where Whoop had built, I think, a cool brand. It was used by the world's best athletes. The technology was very powerful, but we hadn't yet figured out how to make a real business out of it. I mean, we were a week away from declaring bankruptcy before we got a deal done.
But none of that success was guaranteed. Just 2 years after launching Whoop, the pressure nearly broke its founder.
I had raised tens of millions of dollars. We had a team of 30, 40 people, and I felt totally strung out. I was drinking too much coffee, I was drinking too much alcohol. It all kind of climaxed around a day where I had a panic attack and checking myself into the hospital.
There are 3 numbers to look out for in Whoop's story. 143, the number of investors who rejected Will in early years. 2.7 million, the number of Whoop members today. And $10.1 billion, the company's valuation after a major funding round in March 2026. This is Founder Effect.
My name is Will Ahmed, and I'm the founder and CEO of Whoop.
Will Ahmed grew up in Long Island, New York. As a kid, he was obsessed with 2 things: sports and technology.
Throughout my whole life, I loved sports and exercise. I mean, I probably played 10 different sports as a kid. Squash ended up being the one I was best at, so I got to play at Harvard.
While at Harvard, Will captained the men's varsity squash team, but there was a problem he couldn't shake.
I was someone who used to overtrain, where I would go through periods of getting fitter and fitter and fitter, and then, somewhat suddenly feeling completely run down and sort of falling off a cliff and not knowing why. It really felt like the ultimate betrayal, and it was something that was very personal to me. And the more research I did on it, it felt like this wasn't just a problem for athletes, this was a problem that really pertained to all of humanity. Why do we know so much information about the weather tomorrow, or our computer, or our car, but maybe the most important engine in the world, our body, we don't know anything about?
That question turned into an obsession.
I asked myself a pretty innocent question as a 20-year-old college kid, which was, how do you measure the human body? And what that led to was reading hundreds of medical papers and writing my own paper called The Feedback Tool, Measuring Intensity, Recovery, and Sleep.
In the fall of his senior year, he made the call.
I made the commitment to start the company, and I remember telling my parents that, I'm not going to go into finance or consulting or these other things that all my classmates were doing. I'm going to be starting this company. And that was, I think, one of the scariest decisions I made in my life, because I didn't know what I had just signed up for. There was so much unknown in front of me, and I really didn't have a playbook. It wasn't just that I had never started a company before. It was like this was going to be my first full-time job.
Will wasn't trying to build another step counter. He wanted a wearable that could track what was happening inside the body continuously, including sleep, strain, and recovery.
Whoop is a wearable device that continuously measures everything about your body and sends all of that data to your phone and to the cloud, where we give you all sorts of insights to make you healthier.
But when the company started in 2012, getting those kinds of insights from a wearable device still seemed far-fetched.
The wearables market was still very new. There was about 5 million wearables sold a year, which is really small as a market size. And most of the products in the market were either measuring what I would call non-invasive, not particularly interesting metrics about the human body. They couldn't measure what's going on physiologically inside this person's body.
Will was trying to combine the simplicity of a consumer wearable with the kind of physiological data usually associated with clinical or elite performance settings.
Hundreds of investors said no. And so, every day I just try to pick myself up and put one foot in front of the other and keep building.
But Whoop wasn't just up against skepticism from investors. He was entering a category where giants like Nike and soon Apple were moving in.
Nike was coming out with the Fuel Band at the time. Apple was coming out with the Apple Watch, two of the best and biggest companies in the world. There was certainly a pervasive narrative for at least a decade of building this company that we shouldn't build hardware, we should just build the software and the algorithms that sits on top of other wearable products. But I think what that point of view missed was that there was actually no wearable technology out there that could accurately measure the body.
But he ignored the advice and started building.
It took many years to build a product that I wasn't embarrassed by. And the hard thing about being an entrepreneur is balancing this feeling of, gosh, the thing has to be able to do X, Y, and Z, and it needs to look like this, and this is what we're striving to. It's perfection, it's perfection, it's perfection.
Once he had a product, Will made another counterintuitive bet. Instead of chasing mass consumers first, Whoop went after elite athletes.
We started with professional athletes because we felt professional athletes, first of all, needed to understand sleep and recovery and strain. They were getting paid millions of dollars ultimately based on how they recovered, but they couldn't measure recovery. So it seemed obvious that that would be a good market. But separately, and you could argue more importantly for Whoop as a business, professional athletes, if we could get them to really love Whoop, would help us create a brand around performance and make health monitoring aspirational and make health monitoring, dare I say, cool.
It worked. LeBron James and Michael Phelps became early high-profile users, and Whoop started spreading through locker rooms by word of mouth. But behind the scenes, building the business nearly broke Will himself.
I was 24 years old. I was about 2 years into building this company. I had raised tens of millions of dollars. We had a team of 30, 40 people, and I felt totally strung out in building this business. I really was very stressed. I didn't fully understand how to deal with those emotions. I was drinking too much coffee. I was drinking too much alcohol. Like, I was just still a kid, and it felt like I was thrown into the seat of being a CEO, and I didn't really know how to keep up with that. It all kind of climaxed around a day where I had a panic attack and checking myself into the hospital.
That moment forced a hard realization. Whoop could fail, not because the idea was wrong, but because the founder was not evolving fast enough to lead it.
I also realized in that moment that Whoop could ultimately fail in large part because of me. Like, if I didn't keep growing and evolving with the pace of this business, it was going to be my fault the business failed, not the idea or the technology or anything else.
After the panic attack, Will started meditating, changed how he managed stress, and became more deliberate about being the kind of CEO Whoop needed him to be. But changing himself wasn't enough. Whoop had to become a real business, and by 2017, it was nearing bankruptcy.
There was a period in 2017, 2018 where Whoop had built, I think, a cool brand. It was used by the world's best athletes. The technology was very powerful, but we hadn't yet figured out how to make a real business out of it. We didn't have mass adoption yet, so our sales numbers still weren't where they needed to be. So our investors at this point were wondering, well, when is this going to be a real business? And that was a period of time where we almost ran out of money. I mean, we were a week away from declaring bankruptcy before we got a deal done.
Then, in May 2018, Will made the move that changed Whoop's business model completely. He killed the one-time hardware price. The Whoop strap would now be free, bundled with a monthly membership.
We realized that health monitoring was a continuous journey in people's lives. It wasn't a one-time thing. And we needed to invest in new software features and capabilities on a relentless basis. And that felt to us much more like actually a subscription or a membership than a one-time hardware sale. We care as much about keeping our existing members on Whoop as we do finding the next new members. And I think that in many ways aligns us with our member base, and it makes us very focused on, well, what do they need? What do they want? Are we giving them that every day, every week, every month? Because that's what they're paying for.
Today, Will wants Whoop to be more than just a fitness tracker.
The worlds of performance and health are really blurring. Delivering this data around sleep and recovery and exercise, health alerts, even medical capabilities is something that every human needs. Great health is performance, and high-performing people want to be healthy.
In May 2025, Whoop launched Whoop 5.0 and Whoop MG, adding features like health span with Whoop Age, heart screener with ECG, and blood pressure insights. 2 months later, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration sent Whoop a warning letter, saying the blood pressure insights feature appeared to require medical device clearance. Whoop maintains the feature is a wellness tool, but the dispute showed how the line between wellness and medicine was starting to blur.
With Whoop Age, which tells you essentially how old you are according to Whoop based on your behaviors and your physiology, and it's become the most screenshotted page in the Whoop app, the most popular feature in the Whoop app. People really want to take control of their health and they want to feel a little younger.
Will says Whoop now has about 2.7 million members across more than 200 countries, and the company says sales commitments more than doubled in 2025. Whoop's latest fundraising round, announced in March 2026, raised $575 million, bringing in investors from the Gulf, including Abu Dhabi's 2.0, Mubadala, and Qatar's QIA, as well as U.S. health names like Mayo Clinic and Abbott.
We also were able to bring in some really strategic sovereign wealth funds, which reflects all of our growth in the GCC. And we were able to bring on some great health strategics. And then, of course, the world's best athletes.
For Will, it's no longer about survival. It's about scale.
It does give us the opportunity to accelerate a lot of initiatives around research and development, new technology, as well as growing around the world.
And he says they're just getting started.
You shouldn't start a company because you think it's glamorous, but if you see a problem in the world that you're obsessed with and you can't stop thinking about, whether it's in the shower or staring out a window or before you go to bed, like this is the thing you're thinking about, then you should go for it. And I think that goes back to the lesson for any entrepreneur, which is if your mission is that much worth fighting for, you can pull yourself through incredibly painful periods of time and you can come out the other side.